Hey, Read Through the Word. Today is April 17th, and today's lesson is called Love Your Enemies. And here we are with David, and in the middle of his story, and still David and Saul. So let's take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 4 through 12 is where we are. It says, "Now's your opportunity," David's men whispered to him. "Today, the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power and do with as you wish." So David crept forward and cut off a piece of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe, and he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this to my lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him." So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. After Saul had left the cave and gone on his way, David came out and shouted after him, "My lord, the king!" And when Saul looked around, David bowed low before him. And then he shouted to Saul, "Why do you listen to the people who say that I'm trying to harm you? This very day, you can see with your own eyes it isn't true. For the Lord placed you at my mercy back here in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you. For I said, I will never harm the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It's a piece of the hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. This proves that I am not trying to harm you. I have not sinned against you, even though you've been hunting for me to kill me." Okay. Now, this is deep in the Saul is after David, trying to kill him. And David has his chance. And his men even say, "Okay, you've got your chance. Let's try and kill. You can do it. You can take Saul." And he says, "No." So I think there's a lot here for us to learn about relationships and about conflict and what it's like to have conflict with people. Because of the fall, we have enemies. Remembering all the way back to Genesis, when we looked at the fall with Adam and Eve, that broke 4 relationships. Remember? It broke relationship between man and God. It broke the relationship between man and self. I always tell my students at school, as these ideas that you have in your head about yourself all the time, that no one likes me, no one wants to be my friend, all of these ideas that are in there, that's because of the fall. The idea that you can have, there will be days where you will not have negative thoughts about yourself. When we get to eternity and are glorified, it will be wonderful. So I'm always having to teach my students how to do that battle, how to have that battle. Okay, man and creation. Creation becomes red in tooth, thorns, thistle, all of those kind of things. And then lastly, man versus man. We see it right there in the garden with Adam and Eve towards each other. But this conflict, because of the fall, we have enemies. We know people that we have a hard time loving, or we know people who have a hard time loving us. How do we respond to enemies? I had a verse. Let me see if I can get to it right quick. I forgot to grab. Oh, hold on. My son's Bible is in here with his school stuff. Okay. Matthew 5:44. Jesus said this. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's what Jesus says about how we respond to enemies. And that's what we're seeing David do here is, how do we respond to enemies? Or people in conflict, or people that rub us the wrong way. David shows us. David shows us 3 ways he does this. And then I think there's few more little things for us to see. So first thing I think we see is that David resists harming Saul, who's trying to kill him. David realizes Saul's worth and respects that though he is a flawed and sinful man, he is still the king that God chose for Israel. And that's one of the things we need to realize, that whenever we're in conflict with people, we realize all people, no matter whether they're our family, our friend, a stranger, someone that believes different than we do, that does anything, they are all created in the image of God. They are all image bearers. We need that. Now, if they are image bearers who have been redeemed by Christ, they are Christians, then the way we act with each other is totally different. I mean, is very important, but it's also very important if they're not a believer. If they are a Christian, you are the person who could bring the gospel to someone, and the conflict can lessen the conversation you have with someone, because we must resist the urge to fight with weapons of this world. Just like what David's men did. They're like, oh, you could kill him. I think God's setting this up for you. You could kill him right now and we'd be good, David. This is a great idea. No. And it's that just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that's you. It is not flesh and blood that we battle against. And we need to remember that. We need to remember that we're looking into the face of an image bearer of God, no matter what the conflict is. I always say that I had a friend of mine that said it this way, and I probably shared it on here before, that, there are people in your life that just rub you wrong. And she said it was like God's sandpaper. That, yes, they rubbed you wrong, but God was using them to smooth some rough edges on you. That so many times we got our eyes looking at the wrong place during the conflict. So we see that David realizes that Saul is in his position for a reason. And he also realizes that God made him and God chose him. And he when God wants him out of the way, he'll take care of it. I'm not doing it. The next thing we see is that David seeks reconciliation with Saul. That first step. God gives us the strength and the courage to move towards our enemies first. As a Christian, we should always be the one that takes the first step. David and Saul reach an agreement here. And spoiler, Saul won't keep it. We're in chapter 24 right now. Saul's going to break it by chapter 26. But we already know that there's a heart issue there with Saul. But David will keep his word. Because true reconciliation there leads to continuing love and goodness. And what we'll see is we're in chapter, we're in 1 Samuel chapter 24 right now. By the time we get to 2 Samuel chapter 10, God, by that point, Saul's going to be dead. But because of this right here, David will be continuing to try to do good towards Saul and his family. Because of this lasting reconciliation he was seeking with Saul. And since Saul's gone, he's going to seek it with Jonathan's gone. Let's seek it with Jonathan's son. So he's going to continue to pursue this reconciliation. Realizing what conflict does is conflict gives us a chance to get closer to one another, to gain an understanding, and to get closer to God. Because when you have to do the inward work of your own heart towards someone who you just don't like, or who has done something wrong to you, or you're in conflict with, it's always going to have the Lord change your heart is always going to bring you closer to Him, and will bring Him glory in the long run. Now, I always put in a disclaimer here when we speak of such things. I am not speaking about seeking closeness with someone who has done illegal things to you, or who has hurt you physically. That's not what we're speaking of here, and I want you to hear that. That's not what we're talking about. Those are things you need to speak with your pastor and your counselor with. Those are the tools God has given you to take care of that. But in everyday life, there are hard situations and hard relationships. And this is how to handle it in a godly manner. Because we always need to remember, this is not about me. This isn't about me. This is about making a relationship that glorifies God and that pursues the thing God would have us pursue. Now, we're not going to see a perfect model of this right here, of what it means to love your enemies, to be with those in conflict. But we do see it through the greater David. The greater David is the perfect model. And Romans 5:8 says this about him. But God shows His own love towards us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He died for His enemies. His very enemies He died for. So this lesson from David is really important for us to remember. It's not about me. When we're in these type of conflicts, David's like, this really isn't about me. That we see that God is molding us into the likeness of His Son. And sometimes it's a hard path to walk. But thankfully in His Word, He has given us the right way to do it. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.